Hi, everybody, and welcome along to episode 2 of Beats Working in Conversation. Hope you're all well out there. As usual, I'm joined by my fabulous sidekick, Mr. Ian Palmer. How are you doing, mate?
Mate, I'm doing really well. It's good to be back. It's great to be here to record episode 2.
Absolutely. Now then, a little bird tells me that you've been chatting to a very lovely lady, a fine author, all about one of everybody's favourite drummers.
I have, yeah. I was speaking just last week and we recorded a chat speaking to my friend Robyn Flans, who is, by my guess, the finest drummer interviewer on the planet. She knows all of the drummers. She's got a fantastic website, www.robynflansdrummerinterviews.com. And we had a great chat. We chatted specifically about a book that she has just written and released on Hudson Music. And the book is called It's About Time, and it's the story of somebody who really is a saint amongst drummers. It was the story of Jeff Porcaro.
Amazing, and what a drummer he was, eh?
Really,
incredible.
really.
Well, look, I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully you're looking forward to it at home as well. Shall we have a watch?
Let's dive straight in and listen to it.
Enjoy.
Robyn, thanks for joining us. Great to see you. It's an honour to have you to talk with us. I just wanted to ask, a few questions. I'm just intrigued to talk about your history of life in drums. You are the queen of drummer interviews. I've been looking at your website, so www.robynflansdrummerinterviews.com, and I noticed on there just the names that you have had the privilege of talking to, these people who have become friends: Vinnie Colaiuta, Jeff Porcaro, Jim Kellner, Harvey Mason. How did you get involved in talking to drummers?
I just, from my love of music, which probably started with the Beatles, I know it started with the Beatles, to I guess my realization that, for me, it just stems from the foundation, which is the drums. The bass and the drums together. But I guess, I realized from a very young age when I would listen to music, I found myself bobbing up and down and even, just going like this, and the air drums and just everything drums. And so I just, when I realized that acting, which was my major in college, and I tried that for a little while, was not really, I didn't have the stamina for rejection like I thought I did. When I realized I wasn't up for that, I decided that my other love was music, and how was I going to do that? I didn't play music really. I wanted to write about it, and so the best thing I could do was do journalism. So I did take some classes at UCLA for journalism, and I started contacting magazines, and one of the first ones I contacted was Modern Drummer.
And that's how we know each other. So how long have you worked for Modern Drummer for? Or how long have you been conducting interviews for them?
Well, I'm no longer working for them.
Okay.
But I did work for them for 40 years.
Wow. Okay.
From the time they were in their garage, through Bill Miller's editorship. He and when he passed away, a new regime took over, and they decided they wanted to go another route.
Okay.
So I was.
Well, I remember a lot of the interviews that you had conducted over the years with so many of those great drummers. What gets me as well, or what is amazing, is these drummers have become great friends of yours, and I can tell, by social media posts and everybody that shares, the love of everything that you write.
Well, I wouldn't say everybody did. Certainly I would interview people that, we didn't become close, but I've been really blessed that the people that you mentioned particularly like Jim Keltner and Jeff and Vinny. You know, for instance, we became really good friends, all of those people.
I remember as a teenager getting ready for school, reading Modern Drummer magazine whilst eating my cornflakes and trying to finish my homework. And I remember one particular article, and I found out recently that it was the second Modern Drummer session drummer roundtable interview.
The one with Denny and Harvey and Steve Shafer. And okay, that was at my Reseda home, and that was just, I mean, for me, that memory of such a great day. I mean, that was, I mean, how do you even categorize a day where those people walk into your house? And I mean, my ex-husband, who's still my friend, remembers, for him, the memory that sticks out that he always talks about is that Jeff walked in and jumped into his arms and wrapped his legs around his waist. I mean, how do you even wrap your head around that? You know, it was a day, you know, I had this 6-foot sandwich from, you know, one of the markets, and Vinny was, you know, it was in his days of enjoying food, and he was just eating and eating and eating, and you know, it was just, I don't know, it was just a wonderful, wonderful day. I had a new puppy, a boxer puppy, who every time Jeff laughed, because Jeff has this uproarious laugh, the dog would fly onto the couch, onto their laps, because it was like, you know, the puppy didn't know what to make of all that noise, and it was just on top of the people, and then they would scream even louder, and it was just, you know, what a day. What a day.
Well, I remember reading about it and just thinking, wow. I mean, I think that was one of my favorite articles that you had written. But do you have any particular favorite interviews that you've conducted over the years?
Well, I mean, you know, for me, like I said, the Beatles started it all for me. So, I mean, getting to interview Ringo was a pretty major event in my life. I mean, that was, and that's thanks to Jim Keltner. I mean, Keltner put a word in for me.
Ringo really transcends music, doesn't he, as an icon? And we all think about the drummers that got us involved with playing and got us inspired in the first place. And I remember reading those articles of Greg Bissonette, Vinnie Colaiuta, all saying it was the Beatles' invasion, 1964, the Ed Sullivan Show was the moment they said, I want to play drums.
I think it was the moment that I became a human. I mean, I became alive. I mean, it was a response so visceral in my life. I don't even know what happened to me. I mean, I started screaming like every nutcase on the face of the earth. I mean, my sister and her boyfriend were sitting quietly behind me watching. We were watching in my parents' bedroom because, of course, they wouldn't have anything to do with it in the den where they were. And I just started screaming. I mean, my sister and her boyfriend kicked me out of the room. I was crying. And then we got tickets to their first Hollywood Bowl concert because the people that lived next door to us, the husband worked at the sponsoring radio station. I mean, how did we luck out? And they were box seats at the Hollywood Bowl. I mean, those are the best
history.
The best seats. And and I remember sitting over dinner. We went to dinner first. And I remember saying, it was again my sister and her boyfriend who took us, and his younger sister.
Yeah.
And I remember saying, okay, I'm not going to be a stupid nutcase like all the girls and the stupidity that goes on. And so the DJs at KTLA or KRLA, sorry, the sponsoring radio station, all made this big line to announce the Beatles. And they made this line and they said, and here they are, the Beatles. And I don't remember what happened next. I went ballistic. I was screaming. I was craziness. And fast forward, Ian, to just, I don't know, maybe 8 years ago, 10 years ago, Paul McCartney played Las Vegas.
Oh, wow, yeah. Who was on drums for that?
Abe Laboriel Jr.
Yeah.
Oh,
he's a monster.
Really magnificent. If I could use one adjective, I'm sorry, this earbud is driving me nuts.
Oh.
If I could use one adjective to describe Abe Laboriel Jr. on drums, he was dancing.
Yeah.
Oh, it was brilliant.
Yeah.
But I digress.
Please do.
When I was at that concert, we happened to be in Las Vegas by accident, and Paul was there. We happened to look outside the hotel window and saw Paul McCartney in concert. So I reached Abe. He said, oh, yes, definitely come. I'll leave these tickets. I was there with my ex-husband, and we were there with our young twins at the time.
Yeah.
So we go to the concert, and do you know that when Paul did, like, She Loves You, and I Want to Hold Your Hand.
I know what you're going to say.
I was screaming.
Back to the screaming again. Yeah.
I was a grown woman in I was in my 40s or 50s. I don't even know what I was. I was screaming, Ian.
It's unbelievable that a band could have that effect on.
I don't know. I don't know what comes over and I remember my kids were just going, who is that? Who is that?
Wow.
Yeah, they changed my life. They changed my being. Yeah. I don't know.
They changed music as we know it. They changed popular culture as we know it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Actually, I think. Well.
And so the long answer, Ringo. Getting to interview Ringo? Wow. Ringo Starr?
Yeah.
This person that was larger than life. And then when Max Weinberg was working on The Big Beat and had interviewed Ringo, I guess Ringo told him, it must have not felt perfect for Max, but Ringo told him the best interview he had ever done was with me.
Wow. Well, I'm not surprised, but amazing. What an accolade. Fantastic.
And Max called me up, which was so sweet of Max, to tell me.
Wow. Fantastic.
And it just, it was God. It was the best.
Well, 28 years ago, on the 5th of August, we lost somebody who I know was a big fan of the Beatles also. But you wrote a book about this person, and aptly entitled "It's About Time." Jeff Porcaro, who was also included in the Modern Drummer that issue for the Session Drummers Roundtable, and I've been totally captivated by that book. Absolutely amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've read it, and I was just, that was a celebration of his life. How did it come about?
I wish I could remember when it struck me that it had to happen. I just feel like at some point I realized, I missed him all the time. There was never a day that I didn't miss him. I was, needless to say, I mean, I don't even think I need to say it. I was devastated. And I just think at some point I realized I was the keeper of his flame. I mean, I think that I had done more interviews with him than anybody on the face of the planet. And somehow I had an obligation. I know that there were people who said, you know, he was really private and would he want something like that to be there? And, you know, I thought about it, and sure, I mean, if Jeffrey were alive, there would be no reason. He probably wouldn't want that kind of exposure. Mm-hmm. But the fact of the matter is, he left us at such a young age, wanting more, and we've missed him for so long that so many people felt unfinished, unfinished in their conversation with him, unfinished in the music, which I can't help anybody with, except for maybe pointing out music that they didn't realize he had done. But they felt just stripped of so much, and he was taken so unexpectedly, and there was just
I think there's only twice in my life that I've ever experienced an outpouring of grief like that. One was for Jeff Porcaro. The second time, I think, in this country, in the UK, was for Princess Diana, and it was a similar sort of thing in the music world.
So, just so young, so unexpected, so just tragic, you know? And so I just felt a responsibility, and I felt like people needed it. People, and you know what, Ian? Even the people who were close to him, you know, not just the fans, but the producers who worked with him, felt, you know, thanked me for allowing them to have a cathartic experience.
Yeah. Well, I remember when I first found out the news of Jeff's passing, and I remember listening to the vinyl. Okay, it was a really popular album, Toto 4. I remember listening to that vinyl, looking at a picture of Jeff. I think he was kind of doing this sort of pose over those black Yamaha drums that he was playing at the time, and I remember weeping over that. And it makes me feel emotional now. And it was very quickly followed by probably the most emotional article I've ever read in my life, and that was the Modern Drummer tribute to Jeff.
Well, and that was written, I mean, even though, you know, Modern Drummer had a very long lead time. I mean, from the time it was written, of course, and the time that it printed, back in the day, it was months. But I had to start writing that a day after he died.
It was heartbreaking to read.
Well, it was heartbreaking. I wept through the entire process. And I had to get those people on the phone immediately. It was gruesome. It was horrid.
I think the tribute that stuck with me was Steve Lukather's tribute to him there, when he mentioned Jeff's kids as well. I just thought, wow, it's absolutely devastating. I only met Jeff once, and what a privilege, and that was in the January of the NAMM show of '92 at the Remo 35th anniversary. And it was one of the evening events that they put on, and there was a fantastic party band that evening, and that party band was Toto, and that was the only time I'd met Jeff, and you know, I just thank God for that opportunity.
And I let that opportunity go because I had young children that I was raising at the time.
But yeah, your priorities though were right. But I just remember Jeff. I was really shocked actually, because I'd heard him speak, and he had such a big voice and such a big laugh and such a big presence. I was shocked at actually how that he was actually quite a small guy.
He sucked out the oxygen of every room he walked into. It was charisma plus, and just it was just he had so much presence, and
it's funny because I've also noticed that people, when they refer to Jeff, those people that don't really know Jeff and didn't really know anything about him, they call him Porcaro. Those that were fans of Jeff, they call him Jeff, and those that are dear friends of him and family call him Jeffrey. And I noticed that you refer to him as that.
Well, I call them both, but at moments that I'm particularly speaking about him, I always call him Jeffrey.
I noticed that was a kind of common thread with people who really knew him. And I was just thinking about the book. There's a fantastic chapter, and the phone starts to ring. And just reading a little bit into that, you talk about Ray Parker Jr. Making, I think, one of his first demo recordings, and Jeff going around to all the sessions and making sure that before he put any drums down, you're going to listen to this guy.
That was Jeff.
Yeah.
He was, he was the biggest music fan, and if he liked you, he was your loyal friend. He would go to the ends of the earth for you. I mean, look how he felt about Vinny. He came to Vinny's defense. He loved him. He just loved him. And he fought his battles.
Yeah.
If he felt that he was being undercut. And he was all about, I guess that's why I really love, I really haven't thought about it until now. One of my biggest things that I've taught my kids about is justice. I'm a real nut about justice and right and wrong.
Yes.
And
Amen.
and I guess that's what attracted me to the kind of person Jeff was, because that's exactly the kind of person he was. He was all about the justice of things.
I think there was you made reference to on various sessions that if whoever had hired the musicians for the session, if he was acting a little bit in a manner which wasn't acceptable, Jeff would actually stand up and say, "No, you treated the guys really badly. I'm not standing for that."
Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah. He was the arbiter of justice. And I think that's really important. I think that's really important.
I was just so sad that that I met him only once, and at that time I would have been 16 years old, and I remember Jeff made a real fuss at me actually, and he was so kind to me, and he was really. He was just kind of interested, and you speak to people, and it's all about them. But actually, with Jeff, it was. I get that impression with Steve Gadd as well. All these great people. It's never about them. It's actually about what are you doing? How are you doing? It's actually interested in you.
It's so cool. That's very observant of you. Well, that's and those are the top tier people who have nothing to prove. It's the little smushy people who are the ones who are about themselves, who are constantly trying to prove themselves, that are me. And those are the small people who are always, it's about them. They're always trying to prove.
There's a big lesson in that. And every one of those great musicians, I mentioned Steve Gadd. In fact, one of my favorite albums is the Michael McDonald's first album. That's What It Takes. And both Steve Gadd and Jeff Porcaro were the drummers on that album.
Yeah.
And it's just absolutely.
It doesn't get better than that.
It doesn't get better. It's perfection. And
Yeah.
I always call I always call Pro Tools Photoshop for musicians. And,
Yeah.
And that was the raw image. That was what went down. Was what
Yep.
you got, and it was just beautiful.
And it doesn't hurt that Michael is like my favorite vocalist. So for me, that album is sheer perfection.
And he's another person that credits Jeff with getting his career started. Someone at Jeff, and this is, I'm not sure if I'm right in saying this, and maybe you may correct me, but around that time, maybe it was because I was 16, but I'm beginning to realize maybe it wasn't because I was 16, but everyone seemed so helpful and so keen to help each other around that time, a sense of community.
Well, again, though, see, I don't know if it was everyone, Ian. Again, you have to be somebody who's pretty sure of yourself to want to help people. See, somebody like Jeff helping Vinny. I mean, Jeff wasn't threatened. It was like, here, take sub for me. Take my gigs. I mean, that's pretty darn cool.
It was so self-effacing as well.
Yeah.
Was that your interview when Jeff made that crazy...
My time sucks.
That one. Yeah, exactly.
That one.
But yeah, did he say that to you?
He said it to me. And I never let him live it down.
No.
I teased him about it mercilessly. Yeah.
And then you listen to Donald Fagen's Nightfly. You listen to Michael McDonald's. Listen to Boz Scaggs' Silk Degrees. My Time Sucks. Yeah, right.
Yeah, and a lot of that music was before, they were using click tracks constantly in the studio.
There's a video on YouTube of Jeff doing a masterclass at Musicians Institute. And actually then he started to, it was so cool, he was so hip. But he was starting to say then, I'm a little bit concerned about, I think words to the effect, I'm a little bit concerned about these drum machines that are creeping into everything.
He did not like them. In fact, I think at that round table, we talked about drum machines, and he was not having it. He did not like them. Although, if you talk to producers, they would say he was very welcoming. And it's funny to hear them say that, because I knew he was not very welcoming. He didn't like them.
No.
But
there was another kind of crazy thing that Jeff said was that my technique, I don't have any technique. I don't play that technical stuff. So I think there's a difference between technique and playing the technical way, because what he played was super appropriate, but he had a technique which enabled him to play in that way. But, and people had said he played with bands like Charisma, David.
Yeah, he played at the Baked Potato, which was known for, taking things out. And I saw him there. And he was great, but he was always nervous to play there.
That surprises me.
He was nervous. He was worried. He was afraid he wouldn't. And he would say, and I think I wrote about it in the book, I think I mentioned it in the book, that he had ways of, if he messed up, he had ways of covering it up. He could cover that up.
What's that? Just do it twice. No.
Yeah.
Second time I wanted it.
Yeah. See, it wasn't a mess up. Yeah, he just found ways of hiding the mess up.
Wow. I know that he loved Vinny so much that didn't he? And his playing, and not only as a person, but was a big fan of his playing.
Yeah.
And always and his facility on the instrument. I love that story actually with Jeff and Vinny, where Vinny's hi-hat broke at the Baked Potato, and the next thing is Vinny's looking down, kind of rubbing the sweat off his glasses there, and he sees Jeff looking up at him laughing.
Yep, fixing his pedal underneath the hi-hat. Yep.
Well, how long has the book been out for? Now it's November, so it's been 8 weeks the book has been.
Yeah, something like that. It's I'll tell you, it's got a life of its own.
Yeah,
and it's all Jeff, Ian. It's it's just all Jeff. He has fans everywhere, and I'm so thrilled that people all over the globe are reading him and loving him and enjoying him and getting to, particularly now, it's such a hard time in the world. And if I've just given people a little moment of pleasure during this, originally I thought, oh God, I'm releasing this book that I've worked 8 years, who would release a book during a pandemic? Lucky me.
I think it was a great time to release it because people have got the time to read it, and people, if they knew of Jeff, have rediscovered Jeff. If they didn't know Jeff, they've discovered Jeff, which is amazing.
Yes.
So anyone that is watching, this book is an absolute must. I wrote a review for you on Amazon here in the UK, and I meant every single word of it when I said it is my favourite musician's biography.
Thank you, Ian.
By a country
Thank
mile.
you.
It was amazing.
Thank you.
And I just think I need to say on behalf of the drumming community, thank you for writing that book, and thank you for informing a new generation of drummers about Jeff Porcaro.
Well, that was really that was my hope, and I hope that when I'm long gone and my grandchildren's children are looking at I don't have any, by the way, but when they exist, if they exist, hopefully, they'll look at the bookshelves and they'll say, well, what's this? Who's that? Oh, I think that my great grandmother wrote that. I wonder who that is. Oh, it's a drummer. I wonder what he's all about. Yeah. I hope that there will be new discoveries. I hope that drummers who are still wondering who Baby Dodds was or Chick Webb, I hope that they will rediscover who Jeff Porcaro was when he's not as on the radar. And maybe my book will keep that alive somehow when we're all long and gone. Long gone.
I pray that it
because does. That's my hope. That's why I wrote it. I just want to keep him alive forever because he's an inspiration.
He is. He is an icon. You mentioned Ringo Starr, but I just as easily mention Jeff Porcaro in the same breath.
I agree. I agree.
So what plans, do you have any plans now for the future? What's next for you?
I don't know, Ian. It's hard to let go of this. Yeah. Jeff is Jeff, and I'm having a rough time kind of letting go. Okay. I could write more volumes.
Well, I put a message on your Facebook wall saying the book is absolutely fantastic. I love it, but unfortunately, I'm up to page 160, whatever it was, and the end is on the horizon. Can you please write another one quickly?
I think people would get real mad if I wrote another volume.
No.
It would be like, oh, you withheld it in the first one. I feel like, so many people have come to me and said, oh, why didn't you talk to me? Why didn't you talk to me? I have a story. Yeah. And it's just, it's like a record, you don't want to let go. You feel like, oh, I could have made it better. I could have done this. I could have done that. I was never ready to let it go. Rob, my publisher, kept saying, it's time. It's time to let it go.
I can imagine Rob saying that. Yeah. And how it must have been very easy though to get everybody to contribute. You must have had more than enough material from everybody to put into the book.
If I could get to them, it was like I had trouble getting to certain people. Like it took me 5 years to get to Jackson Brown. Yeah. He's so insulated and And I even had, like his publicist is a friend of mine, and he couldn't even get him for me. So finally I had to ask Bob Glob, who's in his band.
Wow.
I mean, I usually don't ask favors, but I really wanted to talk about The Pretender because it's one of my favorite Jeff cuts. And I really wanted Jackson. And you know what? And when I got Jackson, and I said, it took me 5 years to get to you. He said, oh my God, I'm so glad you kept trying.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, I'm really surprised at that. I mean, you had some huge names writing about some lovely things about Jeff. Not only just the session guys, but some huge people: Boz Scaggs, Michael McDonald.
Well, Boz, interestingly enough, I couldn't reach
right.
for this book. I had to use the stuff I had from the Tribute article.
Oh, that's interesting.
I don't know why I couldn't reach him this time. There were a couple of people who tried to help me, but for some reason I could not get to him. I couldn't find management. I couldn't find anybody.
Wow, that's interesting.
So I don't know. And I almost didn't get Donald Fagen.
I was just going to mention Donald Fagen. Yeah.
I almost did not get Donald Fagen, but Rob knew somebody who knew him.
Got to the rescue.
And if I hadn't gone with Rob as a publisher, I would not have Donald Fagen in my book.
I think that's a great partnership with you and Rob. Fantastic.
I am so grateful to Rob for putting my vision together, because I asked for a lot of things from Rob. I wanted it to look a certain way. I wanted it to have that cover. I wanted it to be just, he hadn't done certain things before that I told him that was, it had to be, or it wasn't going to be.
Okay.
I was a hard ass.
You weren't compromising with that.
No, there were certain things I was not. It wasn't about any money for me. It was about the look of the book and the way it was going to be presented. And I got what I wanted.
Well, I just got to ask one question as well. I was really saddened to hear about the passing of Joe recently. Did Joe see a copy of the book before it went to print?
This was the hardest part of this process for me. This was the most painful. Joe was so excited about this book. We had gotten together several months before his passing. He was so excited. He was diagnosed, and I knew about it. And we were in the middle of trying to lay the book out. And I tried to get him a layout copy as fast as I could. From the time he was diagnosed to the time he was not in good shape was very quick. I got them over a copy via computer very quickly, but it was too late for Aileen to even read him anything. It was so awful, and that was the one biggest painful sadness of this whole experience. They were so good to me, that family.
They're a beautiful family.
They, some people think that they should have to see the book in order to authorize their, to give authorization. That family had no compunction about saying, sure, go ahead. You do this.
Well, they know how
talented
you are.
They just knew that I would take their son, Aileen and Joe, and even Steve knew, and Jolene, that it was, they just said, you have our blessings.
Well,
They never even asked to see when I was finished, or, I mean, I wanted them to see it because I wanted them to correct anything that was wrong or whatever, but they didn't care. They knew. I mean, Steve said to me at one point, I know that Jeff is in good hands. I mean, Steve doesn't give out compliments very easily. He's a little bit of a curmudgeon. I love him, but he's a little bit. And so, and when he finished reading it and told me I had done a great job, I felt like I had gotten the Nobel Peace Prize.
and Jolene, did she obviously being blown away?
She became my sister.
Fantastic.
She contributed most of the photos you see in the book.
Yeah.
She went through all those photos with me. We went over those photos together in her house.
That's a great.
She was the best.
Yeah.
I mean, I love that girl so. The family was just so, you know, and of course, you know, I knew Joe. I mean, I had done articles on Joe. So, I mean, he, you know, we had a relationship too. But they trusted me. They knew I would never do anything to hurt Jeff. And they knew that it was going to be what they wanted, hopefully, you know. And I told them, you know, when I sent it over in a very raw form, because it wasn't done, I, you know, was mindful of the fact that there were some stories in there that, you know, Aileen and Joe might, you know, I said, I hope you're okay with some of this stuff. And they're a little racy and, you know, but Jeff was Jeff, and I hope you'll understand.
It would have been incomplete of you not to add those stories in there.
I had to, you know, I mean, I had to. There were other stories that I didn't, because I didn't, you know, but I felt like there was a fine line, and I had to. I mean, Jeff was Jeff, and he was not, like I said, Pollyanna. And I wasn't going to present that kind of picture of him anyway. I had to give some sort of realistic picture, and I'm sure Joe and Aileen knew who their son was. And Jolene told me that her mom loved the book. So
fantastic. I mean, what parent wouldn't love that book, and what parent wouldn't love you for writing that book? It's amazing.
Well, I am sad about Joe, and I'll carry that sadness as part of the experience.
He was just one of the mainstays of all of the drum events, all of the NAMM shows. I always remember seeing Joe at all of the NAMM shows.
Yeah. I love him dearly.
He's one of the godfathers of our industry.
Yeah, he was not just the Porcaro patriarch. He was sort of the LA patriarch.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
Oh, well, John, thank you so much for taking the time to talk. It's been amazing. I always love talking to you, Robyn. So thank you so much
Ian,
for that.
you are such a doll. I adore you. And I hope so much that things get better in the world, and that you can enjoy the wonderful things that you've accomplished, because I am so damn proud of you and everything that you've accomplished.
Robyn, that means a lot.
I have loved watching all your exciting progress and the things that you've done and that you do and that you love, and your passions.
Robyn,
I
want
it to happen. I want it to come back.
Yeah.
So
I believe the world is changing. I do believe the world is changing for much, much the better. I'm coasting out the rest of 2020, and let's have a good 2021.
From your mouth to the world and God's ears.
Lots of love, Robyn. Thank you so much.
Back at you, Ian.
She,
Mwah.
she,
Wow, that was absolutely fascinating, I have to say.
yeah, she's Robyn is quite a lady, amazing, and as I said, she knows all of the drummers and obviously knows the Porcaros very, very well. So yeah, privileged to be able to talk to her. And what I will say is, for anyone that's listening and watching, the book "It's About Time," the story of Jeff Porcaro, is, I think, one of those books that you must read. I think it would make a fantastic Christmas present as well. For any drummer who hasn't got this book, and for just anyone who is a fan of music.
It's an amazing read. It really is some lovely pictures in there as well, stuff that perhaps you wouldn't have seen before.
That's right. Yeah, I think some of the photographs were provided by Robyn's really good friend and Jeff's sister, Jolene. So these are some personal images which she gave to Robyn to put into the book. And what was interesting for me was being able to read through the chapters and look at the album titles and actually be able to go onto a streaming site and listen to, that's a lot of the albums I've got already, but be able to go on to or listen to those albums and listen to those tracks as you're reading the story about how those tracks were recorded and how they came about. Really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely super. Now, there's one thing that I find just a little bit disappointing. And obviously, Robyn, lovely lady. And if you're watching, Robyn, I apologize in advance. But if only she'd have been called Robyn Flans instead of Flans, wouldn't that have been just perfect?
Very good. Yeah, she. I think Robyn actually is the most knowledgeable non-drummer. I think she knows more than most drummers about drumming.
Oh, absolutely wonderful. Well, thoroughly enjoyed it. I hope you all enjoyed it at home as well. So we'll leave it there for today, but we will be back hopefully for a Christmas episode with a surprise guest. You'll have to watch to find out who that is. So thanks for watching. See you next time. Goodbye.
Bye for now. Right, come on, be serious. We've got to get this.
Be serious. You're the professional here.